So let's get to our second receiver off the board here. We're talking about Rashee Rice out of Kansas City. He's had, I would say, Eric, a pretty troubled on the field with injuries and off the field with a lot of extracurricular activities, right? Obviously, the Lambeau incident, which has led to a suspension and then breaking probation and having to go to jail for 30 days, right? So we're still unclear whether or not he's gonna be coming with a suspension risk at this point. But if we're just talking injury, he had a LCL plus the posterior lateral corner, which is essentially the LCL being torn, as well as the popliteus tendon and the popliteofibular ligament as well, right? So it's kind of an injury that happens with like a hyperextension, and luckily his ACL was spared, which makes the recovery a little bit better. But overall, his recovery has been going well. I know that they did kind of have to have like a second surgery. It was more of like a cleanup, debridement in May, just to kind of remove some of the loose debris. Sometimes that happens. Like sometimes there's things called loose bodies that are in the knee that are just causing pain, and they got to remove that. And so they did that, and he's returned to camp, and has so far looked pretty good. I know you've liked Rashee Rice in the past, Eric, and I know he's been on top of your board as a wide receiver 1. But what are your thoughts on him going into this season?
It's funny you say loose bodies. I feel like I've been hearing that so much more as of late with pitchers this season with different like elbow injuries. And now you hear that with the NFL players as well. And so I don't know. It's weird. Yeah. So I like Rashee Rice. I've had him in fantasy for a couple seasons. And if you like look at the stats, you're just like, what's like the big fuss, right? Like, I mean, he's only played 12 games the last 2 seasons. So 4 is crazy. 4 in 2024 and only 8 last year. And he started off his first year playing 16 games. But it just, when you kind of like the eye test, like when he plays, right? He is just so productive. And he just looks so smooth out there, right? And I know there's obviously the off the field stuff, which in most cases, I don't want to say like in fantasy it doesn't matter, because it's going to matter if he's going to miss time for suspension or something like that. But I guess if we don't know what we don't know, and so it's just crazy to me. I was like kind of shocked to see his statistics. Like, wow, like he has not played much. And so it would be hard to kind of put out my chest and, with conviction, like, hey man, he's a guy that you got to pick up, because he hasn't done it in a bit. But all I got to say is like, you really got to think about guys that may not be your week 1 go-to, right? It may be a guy that you can stash because when he plays, he's a baller for sure. Now, will he? Is he healthy? That's another question.
Yeah. I mean, look at the 8 games he played last year, right? I think on average, he was about 18.8 points fantasy in standard PPR leagues during that time, which puts you in the top receivers, right? And 53 grabs in 8 games is double that as 106 grabs, right?
Yeah, so when he plays,
he's definitely there. But when he plays, Eric, 4 games in 8 games, 12 games over 2 seasons, that's not a good look. And you can understand why Mahomes' numbers are down over the last 2 years. He hasn't had his players. But then you go, well, on the other hand, what's their depth? Xavier Worthy, he's kind of banged up all the time. He's already banged up right now, right? And he's not a big guy. He's not a dude that you can depend on, like, throwing for 10 yards, throwing for 8 yards to get receptions. He's more of that like gadget go guy. And then on the other end of that, all you have is Tyquan Thornton, and that's it, right? There's nobody else behind him. And so that's why the Chiefs are like such a hard team to rate, because unless somebody comes up from this preseason and becomes this bona fide other receiver for Patrick Mahomes, there really isn't anybody left besides Rice. And that's why he's so intriguing, and that's why he's still getting drafted pretty early, right? So I think you got to give a lot of scenarios here. I'm a little worried about him coming back from this injury because he's had some injuries in the past. He's had this off-field distraction. He's had a second surgery. Some of the camp footage hasn't looked the greatest as far as his quickness and his speed. So I'm a little concerned there. But this is a risk versus reward, right? We're taking chances in fantasy. Yeah. And I think at this point, to get a number one receiver a little bit later where you can get Rice at will be good value because there's nobody else to throw to.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, as you were kind of talking, like if you think about it, so his last 12 games, he's caught about 80 balls. He's gotten 7 touchdowns and a rushing touchdown, so 8 total.
Yeah.
And about 900 receiving yards. That's 12 games, right?
Yeah. I mean,
is it stretched with 2 seasons? It is. And so I guess that's kind of like my point. When I see him playing, when he's out there, like my eye test, and not only my eye test, obviously, it's also in the numbers, he balls out. And so can you, let's say if he, I don't know, just for speculation purposes, I have no idea. Let's say he gets, I don't know if he gets suspended. Let's say if it's the first 4 games, you got him for the last 13 games, right? Is it 6 games? You got him for the last 11, and so which is big. And so it's crazy to think it's just a mixed bag. Is it pretty dangerous to pick him very high? Yes, but when you're kind of between 2 guys, right? And when you're kind of like mid rounds, right, and you're trying to pick for some value and take some risk, I mean, Rice has got to be up there.
Yeah, I mean, he's not getting suspended for anything he did this offseason. I think the suspension that you worry about is if he does anything else, right?
Yeah, so, there you go.
He is one of those like where he's already got an 8-game ban, right? So it's one of those like if he does anything else at this point, that's probably the season.
He could be, yeah. Because if you had an 8-gamer, your next one is probably a full season.
So like drafting wise, you don't have to worry about this season, but at the same time, you're like, man, it's always those questions in fantasy. Morals versus fantasy. And it's kind of like sometimes you go, I just don't want some of those guys on my team, right? That you just don't feel like you can trust them in that way or at things they've done in their off the field, right? So I think that's where we're at with Rashee Rice, like as far as dilemmas between people. But if, like you said, and you've given the stats, his production is top 5 anytime he plays.
Yeah, straight up. Yep. Top 5 receiver.
And you still are going to have Patrick Mahomes throwing to you.
Yeah, and Mahomes needs him. He needs, just as much as he probably needs Mahomes needs him too. And as you said earlier, just no question or it's not a coincidence that Mahomes has struggled a bit, without Rice. So
yep.